We're in the Song of Songs, and we're speaking about our lovely bridegroom, Christ. This is the most wonderful thing in a believer's life, is to speak about him. He's beautiful from head to toe, from top to bottom. He's full of glory, inwardly, outwardly. Everything about him is beautiful. Everything about him is preeminent, cannot be compared with any other. In this section, in chapter 5 of Song of Songs, from verses 10 through 16, the bride lover is responding to a question of the bystanders concerning who he is. And we're on the 8th item of his beauty, which is his legs. 2 legs. It's the word. Let me read the verse. It goes, his legs are as pillars of marble, yet on sockets of fine gold. This is just the first half of verse 15, and we're going to focus on the item of his legs today. In the Song of Songs, his legs are golden, showing forth his movement is in love. In Revelation 1, his feet are bronze or brass, showing his movement is in judgment. So we're here, one with him in his move of love. And what are his legs? His legs are the lower, some say this is the lower part of his legs, which is distinguished from the thigh. And these legs are for strength in his movement, or stability in his unwavering, firm stand. And so they're instruments of motion, and they support his body. His legs are for the move and base of God's eternal purpose and God's good pleasure. The legs of Christ are for God's move throughout eternity, from eternity to eternity, through time. And with him, there's no possibility of being moved away or distracted or overturned from God's purpose. These legs of gold are, or you can look at it in Hebrews 13:8. It says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and to the ages to come, forever. So he cannot be moved. He's the same. He's not distracted. He's not turned away. And he wants to bring his bridal lover into the same stand, that we would stand. We would be stand ready and firm as he is ready and firm, established in him. And so, how about us? Are we standing together with him? Or are we trying to move away from him? Is what's happening in your life, what's happening in my life. Are we resisting the stand that he's taken? We can never resist him. So his legs are the medium and the method for his move. He's walked in eternity past in an eternal covenant. He walks as the sovereign one. He's walked out of eternity into time, and he walks in love, he walks in grace, he walks in mercy. His walk is full of light. He walked in incarnation, and he walked in humiliation and humility. He walked to the cross for redemption, and he was unmoved on the cross. It was a time of triumph. This cross was a cross of triumph. He walked in resurrection. He was walking in exaltation. It says in Revelation 1, he's walking in the midst of the churches to perfect his lovers, that they can become his bride. Nothing moves him, again I would say, nothing moves him from his stand until he completes the work of love and grace to produce his bride. There's a wonderful verse in Isaiah 33:6, it says, He is the sure foundation. He cannot be moved. He's the sure foundation for your times, a rich store of salvation. And the fear and love of the Lord is the key to this treasure. So he's the foundation of God's eternal purpose, and we enter in and appreciate his standby love. His legs. In the sacrifice of the burnt offering, the legs were particularly described for God's pleasure. They were burnt for God's pleasure. So the movement and stability of Christ is the one who was totally consumed as a sacrifice for the pleasure of God. And it's amazing. The word legs is not used in the New Testament often, but it's used when Christ was on the cross. His legs were not broken. The two thieves' legs were broken, but not his legs. It's just a testimony of the unbreakable, eternal resurrection life that he bore even while he was on the cross. He could not be broken. His legs could not be broken. The move of God could not be stopped even when he was on the cross. He endured the cross, and he fulfilled the determined counsel of God. His legs were not broken. He could not be moved away. His legs describe the ways and going forth of the Lord. In Micah 5:2, it says, One will go forth for God to be ruler, and his going forths are from long ago, even from the days of eternity. His legs just show forth he went out of eternity into time, to Bethlehem, out of heaven to earth. His was not a crooked way or crooked walk. He journeyed to bring mercy. His journey brought truth. His journey brought love. And his journey brought judgment. Actually, there's two great movements. There's many movements of our wonderful beloved Christ, but the two great movements are his first coming and his second coming. His first coming was a display of love for redemption as the Savior, and in his second coming, in his move of his legs, he will be coming in righteousness for judgment as the King. His legs are pillars of marble. These pillars are columns. They're straight, they're well-shaped, they're strong. And a couple of times in Exodus, these pillars are used. In Exodus 13:21, it's the cloud and the fire that led and protected the people of God out of Egypt were called pillars. And then in Exodus 26 and 27, when it talks about the dwelling place of God, pillars are used to support the dwelling place. So during our journey in the wilderness, where many times we feel we're wandering, there is a pillar there. What is the pillar? It's the legs of Christ, leading us, protecting us, guiding us out of any kind of wandering life into the good land. And in the good land, there's the pillars of the temple. So we move out of the wilderness into the good land to produce the temple for God's purpose and pleasure, for his testimony on the earth. There's an interesting verse in Psalm 147, verse 10. It says, He takes no pleasure in the legs of man. What man can do, good or fallen man, cannot move to accomplish the purpose of God. Only our beloved bridegroom's legs as pillars of marble can accomplish God's good pleasure and lead us into God's good pleasure. His legs are firm and stable, and his legs cannot be turned by any opposition. Actually, these legs support the universe. These legs support the church. These legs support the bride. And with these legs, he puts his feet upon the enemy's head. In Colossians 1:17, he says, He is before all, and all things are held together by him. And you go back into Song of Songs 3:10, when it describes the move of the bride, it uses the same word, pillars. In Galatians 2, when it talks about the sent ones or the apostles, they are represented as pillars. Pillars in God's move, pillars in God's economy. And then the overcomers, the bride of the Lamb, are pillars, and they match him in Revelation 3:12. So we join to him, we join to his legs, that his legs would become our legs, and we can move in God's eternal purpose. And these legs are pillars of marble. And what are marble? Marble is a white color, it's alabaster. And actually, it's the word marble is used in Hebrew. It's called fine linen. So it's a hanging, fine white linen used for holy matters. The curtains in the tabernacle for God's rest, for God's enjoyment, for God's pleasure, were of fine linen. And also the serving priest who served God served in garments which represented the fine humanity. In Christ, in his fine humanity, dwelled all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. And our bridegroom has a pure, a spotless, inherent righteousness as he moves in his human living, as he moves in his death upon the cross. And even when you look in Revelation, he's clothed with a garment, although it doesn't say fine linen. It describes the priestly garment. So in resurrection and exaltation, John saw the bridegroom with the fine linen. Marble, the color white of this marble, actually it's a description of his eternal, pure, righteous person. And we've seen, as we've gone through this section that describes the wonderful person of Christ, this color white has been repeated. In verse 9 it says he was white and ruddy. In verse 12 it says it's the white milk of his eyes. And then in verse 13 it could be his lips could be white. In verse 14 it's the ivory white belly, or ivory white inner parts, and then in this verse, the white legs of marble for God's move. Eventually the Bible, one of the consummating things in the Bible is a great white throne. Everything about Christ is white, is bright, is pure, is shining. And as we attach ourselves to him by faith and love, our lives become white. His legs are set on sockets of fine gold. This word set in the Hebrew, it means something from above that is coming in a downward movement. So something established, something founded or fixed, something appointed or ordained. He was ordained from eternity. In Proverbs 8:22 and 23, it says wisdom, which is personified, the personification of Christ, is set up from everlasting. So he's been ordained or founded or set up from eternity. Before the foundation of the world, he was there. He was set up. In time, he's set up as the church is one foundation. Nothing can move the church. She cannot be moved. The bride of Christ cannot be moved because he's set up. He's set up into eternity future as the holy foundation of the city, which is the bride of the Lamb. Here you see the bridegroom and the bride set up for eternity. So what about our life? What is the foundation of my life? What am I standing on? What is keeping me? It's only him. He is the one. His legs are set on sockets of fine gold. This word sockets is actually a solid base. It's like pedestals for the pillar of marble. to be set. And they could denote his feet. Actually, the sockets could be denoted as the feet of his legs. And the sockets are used in Exodus for the tabernacle, emphasizing his great redemption price, because in Exodus the sockets are silver, and so it's the redemption price which is apprehended by our faith. But the sockets in the Song of Songs are golden, or gold, and this emphasizes his eternal love, the eternal love of God. And we receive and we apprehend this love. We lay hold of this love by our love. We lay hold of his legs by faith and love. In the Gospels, you see the feet of Jesus were washed with tears. The feet of Jesus was anointed with perfume by his faithful, loving seekers. We love the legs of Christ, which cannot be broken. We love the feet of Christ, which move in God's eternal purpose. And his legs are set on sockets of fine gold. Again, gold is mentioned. It's mentioned 3 times in this section as she describes him. And this is the purest of all of the fine, refined gold, of his unchanging splendor of divinity. It's the same gold that is mentioned in verse 11, describing the head, but it's a different gold that is used. The Hebrew word for gold is different in verse 14, which describes his hands. It's not a raw gold, but it's a refined gold, refined and purified to the highest level. And this is amazing because the head and legs are the same gold, so the thoughts, the eternal thoughts and counsels of his head are matched by the movements of his legs and his feet. God in all his divine eternal attributes move and are expressed in his beloved Son. You know, when you read Daniel chapter 2, there is an image, and it begins with the head of gold, just in the same way as Song of Songs chapter 5. But as you read through Daniel 2, the gold is changed to another element, until eventually the golden image ends up with iron and clay. And this just shows the deterioration of the government, the degradation and deterioration of humanity. But with Christ, the head is of gold, and the feet and the legs are of gold. There's no corruption with him in his move, in his thoughts. He's totally a golden person. He's divine. This is our beloved. Someone asks us, who is our beloved? He's totally divine in his thoughts and in his move. So what is he doing? He's making us golden. We're partaking of his divine natures. And in 1 Peter 5, it says that we will partake of his glory. We're standing. As he stands, we're standing in grace. We're withstanding the enemy as a roaring lion. And he will keep us. These strong, moving, firm legs will keep us from falling, and to stand in his presence without fault or blemish, to be his eternal bride. Yet today, what about his legs? Today he's standing. He's standing outside, out of the door of the church in Laodicea, and he's knocking. He wants us to join him in everything he would want to do today. So as he stands and knocks, there should be no compromise. There should be no resistance. There should be no other lover. That we can move in union with him in the same way that it says that Enoch walked, his legs walked with God, and he was not.